Good morning! So I am out here watering my raised beds. We have the drip line set up for the in-ground beds, the no-dig, no-till beds over there, as well as the raised bed that's kind of low behind you, the newer bed that I put in for tomatoes. And but these higher raised beds out here, I come out here and I hand water. Every couple days, I just kind of deep water the beds. It takes a little bit, but I take that time to examine my plants. That is one of the benefits of hand watering, is the time that you're spending looking at your plants. You can inspect, you can do a little pruning here and there, look for any kind of insect damage, harvest, of course. So I did want to mention, when I'm out here with my tomato plants and such, anytime I prune something off, unless it's an excessive amount, like if I'm doing a heavy pruning and I've got a lot of excess removed foliage, if there's a lot of it, I'm going to throw it in the compost. If it's just a few suckers here and there, I just drop those down onto the top of the soil, let them break down, and let those nutrients go back into the soil. Basically compost in place. The only time I will not do that is if I am seeing signs of blight or some sort of illness, bacterial, some sort of infection of some sort. If the plant is sick, then what I remove is going to go to the burn pile. It's not going to go into the compost. It's not going to get, composted in place. I'm getting it away from my garden. I don't want it out here. But anytime it's just like a healthy, excessive sucker or something like that, then I just drop it in place. So I have to tell you, I made a mistake in my garden. Ooh, hot. Now, as you know, I grow all different kinds of tomatoes. I always do a variety of varieties every year. And this year I grew several types that I've never grown before, to include Determinate tomatoes. So there's two different types of tomatoes if you're new to gardening. There's Determinate varieties and then there's indeterminate varieties. Indeterminate varieties of tomatoes will produce fruit, tomatoes, for an indeterminate amount of time. They will continue to set blossoms and produce tomatoes as long as you can keep that plant healthy, as long as the growing season continues, all the way up until the first frost or freeze or whatever. Determinate varieties of tomatoes will generally produce all of their fruit right about at the same time. Because I have never grown Determinate tomatoes before, I actually forgot that you're not really supposed to prune Determinate tomatoes, because all of those suckers, all of those extra branches are going to produce your tomatoes. So when you prune Determinate tomato plants, more than likely you are cutting off the chances, quite literally, of having all those tomatoes. So the plant is still going to produce, there's just not going to be anywhere near as many as there would have been had I not pruned the Determinate tomatoes. So just to alleviate any concern that I might actually be a really good gardener. Just, you can let that thought go. Alright you guys, so I'm out here in the front garden now, and I have got to share something really cool with you. So I mentioned in my last garden tour that went up over the weekend that I had found a couple of hornworms in my tomato plants over in that bed. The easiest way to find them is in the dark with a UV flashlight. And I was asked where to get a UV flashlight from. I found some. They're small. They're like maybe 12 bucks, 10 bucks, something like that. I found them in my local Lowe's in the flashlight section. Nothing fancy. Of course, you can always get them off of Amazon. That is the easiest way to find them. The second way that you can find them, well, the way that I find them, is I will notice droppings. And as I described in the other video, it almost looks like miniature horse manure. It's round, it's, you know, globular, and you'll see it laying on a leaf, and then look up and you'll usually find the hornworm somewhere in there. And if you can't find it with your eyes during the day, come back with your flashlight, your UV light, look in that area, and that's usually where you're going to find them. Well, I'm over here in this other bed, and I noticed some droppings. And they were small, but they were droppings. And looked up, and you guys, I found the hornworm, but I wasn't the first one to find it. You can see the hornworm is hanging, just hanging, obviously not alive, and feeding on it. I don't know if you can see it or not. That's an assassin bug. Assassin bugs are one of the many varieties of beneficial bugs that you want to have in your garden. Like ladybugs, you know, everybody knows about ladybugs and how they eat aphids, praying mantises, which, you know, of course are one of my favorites. They eat anything they can catch. And an assassin bug is another one of those beneficials, and all three of those, ladybugs, praying mantises, assassin bugs, you can actually purchase like the larva or egg cases, or sometimes the insect, and have them shipped to you online. And another question that I get is where can you get those? Arbical Organics. That is one of my favorite places to get organic, safe, you know, good for your garden, good for your environment types of pest control. I first found out about them years ago with mosquito control. Oh, thank you, honey.
There's just a little ice in it.
Okay, thank you. I first found out about it when we lived at Fort Bragg. We had a backyard patio garden, and I used a lot of self-watering pots, and of course those self-watering pots have standing water in the bottom of them, and that is just a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And I found something that you can put in the water that keeps the mosquitoes from growing. Totally safe. You know, if your dogs walk up and drink out of the water, or a squirrel gets in there or something, it's not going to hurt animals. It just only goes after mosquito larvae. And so that was a way for controlling mosquitoes with all of that water in all of those pots. So that is how I found out about the website. And again, this is not a sponsored post. This is just providing information, something that works for me, is helpful to me, and I just want to share with all of you. But that same website, you can get praying mantis egg cases, you can get ladybugs, you can get assassin bugs, and there's other beneficials as well. That is also where I ordered my beneficial nematodes. And I've got to tell you, those, I'm sold. I'm sold on the nematodes. I've had a little bit of pest issues this year, but we're looking at the end of June. I have had nowhere near the amount of pests that I usually do. I think the one thing I've been dealing with for the most part has been the squash bugs, but even those have not been out of control. I just go out there, I spray down my squash plants just with the shower setting with the water hose, just kind of wet the plants, and what that does is it drives the squash bugs up. They don't like to be wet, so when you just spritz your plants with some water, they start climbing up the stems, and they'll just sit there on the top of the leaves sometimes, and it's just easy to just pluck them, throw them in a jar of water, and then when they're dead, feed them to your chickens. And then once I've done that, I go back and I actually water the soil around the plants. While I'm doing that, I'm looking at the plants, looking for squash bug eggs, which I just remove with duct tape. Stick them on, pull it off, wad it up so that they're trapped, the eggs are trapped inside that tape, and toss them. That's what I do all the time for squash bug control. But this year, there has been so few. I mean, usually I can go out there every single day and find at least 4 or 6. They're usually in pairs. 4 to 6 squash bugs almost every day. This year, I can go days without finding a single one. And so even the squash bugs are lower down in numbers. I have seen one Mexican bean beetle, and those usually decimate my bean plants the second they start growing. I mean, they'll be about 6 inches tall and they'll have them all over them, and I've seen one this year. I've had one instance of aphids, and that was just on the milkweed flowers because they love milkweed. I've so far seen 0 on any of my tomato plants. I've seen no thrips. I've seen no scaly mites. I've seen very few Japanese beetles, maybe 6 total. Yeah, so I am definitely sold on the nematodes. Definitely. But that assassin bug, that is definitely a cool find, and I'm very happy to see that in my garden. And again, you know, that's just another one of the reasons I don't like to use a lot of chemicals. I've never bought 7 Dust or anything like that. I try to do everything as minimally as I possibly can when it comes to spray, even the organic friendly ones. I want to use them as little as possible. And they're generally only if I absolutely have to. Because the sprays that you're going to use in your garden, or your 7 Dust or anything like that, if it's going to kill insects, it's most likely going to also kill bees and all of your other beneficials that you want in your garden, like the assassin bug. Alright, so I was just over in here watering and all that stuff, and I noticed some droppings. So I started looking around. Another hornworm. Now, these things get a lot bigger. They will get to be about the size of my index finger. And they are very, very destructive. As you can see that this little branch was getting stripped. Makes it easy to find their damage. So I have been asked Do I ever give these to my chickens? Oh yeah, they love them.